Hello, and welcome to Caffeine Entertainment. I'm your host, Mental9R, and this is my very first game review. Today, we are diving into the eerie and thrilling world of Silent Hill 2, specifically the 2024 remake on PlayStation 5. This highly anticipated game brings the classic horror game into the modern era, and if you're a fan of psychological horror or just love a good story, then Silent Hill 2 might be for you. Silent Hill 2 Remake follows the tale of James Sutherland, a man who receives a mysterious letter from his deceased wife, Mary. The letter beckons him to the eerie town of Silent Hill. The narrative is rich, deep, and gripping, pulling you into James' psyche as he unravels the dark secrets of the town and his own past.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday. But you never did. Well, I'm alone there now. In our special place. Waiting for you.
Personally, having never played a Silent Hill game before, I had no idea what to expect when I started this adventure, but as someone that loves the Resident Evil franchise, I'm not gonna lie, I had high hopes for this one. Throughout the game, you'll play as James as he fights off creatures that are straight out of your worst nightmares. They lurk in the fog and shadows while you search for clues for Mary's whereabouts. Along the way, you'll meet a few other NPCs, Angela and Eddie, and a young girl named Laura. Most notable, however, is Maria, that has a striking resemblance to Mary, however, with a markedly different personality. All of these pieces fit together to build a compelling story which I found thoroughly engaging throughout my playthrough. The game's pacing is well balanced, ensuring you never feel overwhelmed or bored. Throughout your playthrough, you're going to encounter several puzzles that are both challenging and rewarding, requiring you to think critically and pay attention to your surroundings. You'll often find yourself searching for clues to unravel the mystery that lets you get through that particular mechanic and onto the next part of the game. Graphically, Silent Hill 2 Remake is a very good looking game. Bloober Team did an excellent job of leveraging Unreal Engine 5 in building realistic character models and a realistic environment. Character models overall look good, but they aren't overly outstanding. We're not talking about Hellblade 2 levels of visual acuity here. Still though, it's a good looking game, and I think overall, if it wasn't for games like Hellblade, it would rank right up there with among the best. I'm a big fan of a lot of the choices that were made. Things like the way the fog limits your ability to see the creatures until you're already very close to them. It makes for some creepy moments. In fact, you'll often hear the creatures around you long before you see them. And that leads me into the audio side of things. I found the audio in the game to be outstanding. The ambient noises, the use of audio cues, lending you insight into what might be beyond the next door or around that next corner. They worked incredibly well together in building that eerie world that is Silent Hill. There were countless times where I was on the edge of my seat waiting for what might come out of the shadows or from the fog, oftentimes giving me chills up my spine or goosebumps on my arms. There were plenty of jump scares throughout the game as well. A few of them got me pretty good, but I'm not one that's easily scared in that regard. The voice acting was also very well done and on point. Not only did it not detract from the experience, it added to it greatly in moments of urgency or despair. Very well done on the voice acting. The main two characters especially both did fantastic jobs. Their voices were always on point and captured the desired mood perfectly. I also want to give special mention to the portrayal of Angela. Very well done. In terms of the controls, I found Bloober Team did a great job of utilizing the DualSense controller. There was one moment I recall specifically where I was walking through a courtyard in the pouring rain while feeling the raindrops hitting James on the back. It was the use of the haptic feedback in scenarios like that that really stood out for me. Sure, the haptic triggers were great too, but I really grew to appreciate the haptic feedback in the controller itself as I played through this game. Gunplay, however, was a different story. I found the controls to be a bit mushy and missing the precise feel of a high-end shooter. This is somewhat understandable, of course. The game clearly isn't a shooter, and one would expect that James wouldn't be a crack shot, so the sloppy feel does fit the narrative in that regard. Still though, as someone that loves the shooter genre, I would have been happy to trade off some of the expected sloppiness for a crisp experience here. Last but not least, let's talk a little bit more about the graphics and the performance of the game. Two thoughts come to mind when I think of Bloober Team as a development studio. Number one, I would say Bloober Team did an outstanding job on making a very good looking game. This isn't surprising to me, most of their games do look pretty darn good. Sure, it's not quite at the level of a Hellblade 2, as mentioned previously, but it's a great looking game. Number two, in what I've come to feel is typical Bloober Team fashion, the game suffers from performance issues. There's points where I'm sure the game dipped into the 30 FPS range while I was in performance mode. It wasn't uncommon at all to feel the game significantly fall off the 60 FPS target. It's worth mentioning, however, that even with this less than locked 60 FPS, and I mean it was less than locked 60 FPS in performance mode, it was still my preferred way to play the game. Most of the time, the variable refresh rate was able to compensate for the dips, and the game still felt fairly smooth. I'll also mention that thankfully, most of the areas where the frame rate really dropped weren't in areas where there was critical moments taking place. Aside from the performance issues, I didn't encounter any major game-breaking bugs. I just had one single crash where the game brought me back to the PS5 dashboard, and thankfully that was right after I had saved it, so it was no big deal. I didn't lose any progression. I will say this though, I obviously didn't play the game at launch. I waited in my typical fashion for a good sale price, and that's when I bought it. Nonetheless, I'm sure there was a few patches along the way. Overall though, the game played really well. For now, Silent Hill 2 Remake is a PS5 console exclusive for at least a year. If you're a PC gamer, you're in luck. You can go out and buy Silent Hill 2 today and enjoy every aspect of the game. But if you do have a PlayStation 5 today and you're more of a console gamer, I would recommend you go out and buy the game. I had a great time with it, and I gotta say, the DualSense controller added a bit of that extra immersion to it in this case. I typically don't get too bent out of shape over those types of things, but I thought they did a great job with it in this specific game. In terms of replayability and longevity, I played through Silent Hill once and obviously experienced just one of the 5 possible endings. If you're a completionist and feel the need, there's plenty of motivation to work your way through the messed up town of Silent Hill more than once. Myself, I do intend to go back and experience it again at least one more time. I'm not gonna lie though, I'll be taking steps to make sure I get a different ending. Silent Hill 2 Remake has a lot going for it. For those that like the survival horror genre or just horror genre in general, Bloober Team did a great job in recreating this game for 2024, and the experience was well worth the time I put into it. The only complaints I have are 1, the inconsistency in performance mode on the standard PS5, and 2, the gunplay being sloppy. Again though, that second one is kind of understandable, if not expected. In the end, Silent Hill 2 is a game I'd highly recommend to anyone that likes this genre. How does it compare to Resident Evil? I did say I'm a big fan of the Resident Evil games. In my opinion, and I'm probably going to get some hate for this, they're really two different sides of the same coin. Resident Evil being more action focused, if I can say that, and Silent Hill 2 being slower paced, relying on puzzles and things to get you through the environment, but that really seems to build the suspense, and the tone that they put into the audio was fantastic. Which one do I like better? That's another really tough question. I love Resident Evil, but Silent Hill has gained nothing but respect from this guy. All said and done, I'm going to give Silent Hill 2 Remake a 90 out of 100. If not for the erratic performance issues, I would have scored it higher. I probably would have given it a 95. It's still a great game though, and well deserving of the accolades that it's received. Fans of the survival horror genre should have a great time in Silent Hill 2, even if it's a bit slower paced at times. Well, that's it. That's all I've got for you. Thanks so much for joining me today on my very first game review. If you stayed with me this long, I'd greatly appreciate it if you drop a like, subscribe if you're on YouTube, and follow if you're on Rumble, and maybe share this video with a few of your friends. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments below. Have you played Silent Hill 2 Remake? If so, let me know what you think. Once again, I'm Mental 9R, this is Caffeine Entertainment, and don't forget, it's time to wake up and play some games.